My story with this is really prominent in my life. I grew up in a lot of chaos, alcoholism, mental illness, tragedy. Chaos that was sometimes felt really chosen. I was surrounded by a family that felt like fighting was the new normal. And I remember running off when I was 14 and being like, get me out of this house. And I would go to the mall, and there were no cell phones then, actually. And so I would go to Borders because they had one of the few pay phones, which happened to be located next to the self-help section. And I was like, this is perfect. What I now would call like divine intervention or divine timing. But back then I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'll look at meditation and whatever. And so I started on this path of like trying to quiet my mind and trying to get out of the chaos. And I took it to an extreme, actually. I took it really far, and I started trying to avoid chaos and loss and junk so much that I was like, I have to feel normal. And so I started doing everything that people told me I should do. My friends told me I should, wear this or wear that or date this guy or date that guy, or I should go to this party and I should, drink or do whatever. I mean, they didn't have to push that hard for some of it, but I did everything I should do, right? Like I did well enough in school that, I was seen as smart and intelligent, but I also stuck with the party kids, so I was cool, and I tried to go both ways, right? I really tried to do what everyone told me to do. I became a teacher because someone said, oh, you're really great, like with the kids, like you should be a teacher. And I was like, okay, cool. I went to college to be a teacher. You should date that guy. I dated the guy. I remember my mom calling once and being like, you should probably like look into getting a serious relationship soon. You're getting kind of old. And I was like, shit. So I went out that night and like met a guy and dated him. And I started getting a little unhappy teaching. I worked actually here in DC, in Southeast DC, which I loved, but it was feeling a little, something was missing, right? Like I loved the teaching part and I loved the empowerment part and I loved watching people make a difference in their lives, but something was off. And so I started talking about it, and someone's like, you should go back to grad school and get another degree. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did. And this was my path. Like I just kept doing what I should do. And quite honestly, I wasn't even gonna say this, but someone told me I should hire a life coach. And so that's how I met Katie. That's why I'm here. And I forgot that was part of the story. But I was at a baseball game and I was complaining about my job. And this girl was like, you should hire a life coach. And I was like, well, I have a therapist, a nutritionist, a personal trainer. I'm like, okay, let's add it to what I should do. Best should of my life. But I got to a point where I was just like ridden with anxiety. I was waking up every day and doing nothing that I wanted to be doing. I even remember a point when I was like, wanted simple things like to stop at 7-Eleven or like to get a dog, and people were like, you shouldn't do that. And I was like, oh, right, duh, like stay in your lane. And I got to a point where I realized I made no choices for myself. And I think Katie's the first one who tried to tell me this, but I was like, stop saying that. I don't get a choice. Like, my desires don't matter. Like, I'm just going to fit in this mold that's perfect and do everything I should do and everything I'm supposed to do, and that's how I'm going to be successful. But if that was successful, that fucking sucked. I was sitting in my therapist's parking lot, and I was on the phone with Katie, who was my life coach, and I just... people always ask, like, what's your breakthrough? When did you have your breakthrough? And, like, it's always at a different time. Mine happened to be in the therapist parking lot, which I think is pretty exciting and, like, a little dramatic in Hollywood. Thank you. And she was like, so what do you have right now that you actually want? And I was like, nothing. I'm very fortunate. I have nothing to complain about, but I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I would always get my greatest visions when I was on the treadmill, and I imagined myself, I'm going to have a full circle moment in front of you right now, but I imagined myself speaking in front of a room of women, because my favorite part about being a teacher was parent-teacher conferences when the moms would come in and I'd be like, this is how you make it better. This is how you inspire your kids. And like they would be like, yeah, some of them. Some were like, she's crazy. Like, get your crystals away from me, and the meditation book, and like stop having the students meditate. They need to practice for the math test. But I was like, no, this works. But I remember telling Katie, I was like, well, there's no market for this, but like, I really want to teach women how to like change their families and change their lives and change their communities and change the world, like lofty goals. Stop thinking about those, Olivia. You shouldn't think about those. And when I sat in that parking lot that day, I just hit that point. Like, I don't know if you've ever had a point in your life where you're just like, nope, enough's enough, but that was my enough's enough moment. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go to the beach. And I want to like figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life because this cannot be it. And so I did it, actually. I broke up with my boyfriend from the therapist parking lot. I called my dad and I was like, you're going to kill me, but I'm not going to go back to work again. And I called the principal and I was like, I'm quitting. I love it, and I love the kids, and I'll finish the school year, but I'm quitting. I have to go. And he could feel it coming when he was like writing me up for meditating during math time. And the lesson for me, which is the lesson I'm teaching you, is that I had run my life on what I should do and not run my life on what I wanted to do and what I desired to do. And as we all know, well, if we don't all know, I'm going to tell you now, everything that we create in our lives begins first with our thoughts that we have around them. So when we are, shaming ourselves in a way with what we should do, we're not actually putting ourselves at choice and at desire and creating the world and the life that we actually want. And so I can speak that now from having coach training. But back then I just was like, shit, I wrote a book in kindergarten called My Favorite Thing to Do is Exactly What I Want to Do. Like, where did she go? Where did Olivia go that was choosing? And so at this point I was like, well, I'm just going to start doing what I want to do. And so I did. And I started looking at all of the pressure and the anxiety that I felt from running my life based on what everyone else told me to do as just a stopping point, a level of higher awareness where I could actually look and shift into desire and into choice. And so the lesson I'm sharing with all of you is really just a new level of consciousness. It's to start listening to yourselves when you're not really choosing. How many of you, I know I asked you this at the beginning, but have a resounding should going through your brain right now? Thank you. Thank you for raising your hands. I was hoping you would. Some of my students never did. That is, in coaching we call it a context, right? It's a lens to see the world through. It's an idea that may or may not actually be yours. I read an article about shoulds to prepare for the speech that I didn't really write. And it said that should is a way to compare yourself to someone else's idea of perfection. And that doesn't feel good. Because what I want is not necessarily what you want or what the girl up next to you wants. And so by actually shifting into desire and into choice, that's when you can really step into your own power and start creating the world that you actually choose for yourself, not just the byproduct of everyone else's idea of perfection. And so if you look at your worksheet in front of you and pull out your number 2 pencil, this is not a multiple choice test, but you can actually start to analyze some of those thoughts that go through your head. And some of them may actually be things that you want to do or you don't want to do. But just having that level of awareness and really checking in with yourself on what it is that you desire puts you back in the driver's seat. So the voice of, for me, like my dad saying you shouldn't quit your job, or my mom saying you should have more babies. I finally did her right by that. I had a baby last year. But now I should get married, so I'm back at square one again. But it actually puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. And so take this worksheet, but take this lesson with you into everything that you take on. Because you are actually the one that gets to decide. And you are actually the one that gets to choose what you should or shouldn't do, or what you want and what you don't want to do. And so I ask you to powerfully consider what your life would look like if you started choosing based on desire and based on what your heart really wants.